Good evening. I will call the meeting to order at 7:06 p.m. Inform the public we are returning from an executive session with nothing to report out. This meeting is being held consistent to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, which is posted on our agenda in its entirety. Pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Acceptance of the meeting minutes from April 29th.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those are approved. No department heads this evening. Appointments, we have one to the Serpent District. Carol Sullivan, what's the board's pleasure?
To approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved. Thank you. No public hearings this evening. If the board will indulge me, we will go out of order. We have Attorney Peetnick with us this evening, and I'd like to take him out of order so we can get him in and out, seeing no objection. Council, thank you for joining us this evening. I asked you to come in. You had issued a few weeks back an opinion to us relative to our request for an opinion on equitable sharing of information, and you gave us a lengthy opinion, 11 pages long, and I know I had some questions on it. I'm imagining the board did, but basically, to get to the crux of it, my question originally was if I put forward information, that information would be shared with the rest of the board, but it didn't appear as though any other information was being shared from other people. So what I was looking for was some feedback and guidance from you, legal guidance, as to what the parameters were. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I got from this was that there can't be any type of deliberation behind the scenes, and that it really shouldn't be shared in a group setting or a group email. So that's what I took from it. If you want to elaborate and expound upon it a little bit, we'd appreciate it, but trying to synthesize it down for the board and for those at home.
Okay. So the first thing is information. When you say information was shared in some instances and not in others,
Yep.
in others, you're talking about emails?
Yes.
And what kind of information are you referring to?
So I would say routine emails and questions. If, for example, I asked if it was raining out, my answer would then be shared with the entire board.
Yeah.
Well, the answer I received would then be shared with the entire board.
Okay. And in other instances, that was not the case?
Correct.
All right. So if you're asking me if anyone on the board has a request for information, then that information should always be shared with everyone. But that's the simple answer, but it becomes a lot more complex after that. And where the complexity comes in is this. The simplest advice that I can give you is that unless, and I'll try to be particular, you're distributing meeting agendas, scheduling meetings, and distributing documents created by non-members to be discussed at meetings, which are administrative tasks specifically sanctioned under the open meeting law, you're creating a potential problem under the open meeting law. So if one of the selectmen has a question that they ask somebody, I would respectfully suggest that the way that should be answered is this. So everybody should be notified that there's a question that came up about a specific issue and that it's going to be addressed at a specific meeting, and the information will come out then and shared at the meeting. The point of the open meeting law is to disperse the idea that people are meeting behind the scenes and discussing issues and solving those problems ahead of the meeting, and they want transparency in public forums. That's the whole point of the open meeting law. So the fact that there is an issue, that being shared in and of itself is not an issue, as long as, and this is a huge point, there is not an opinion in that. So for you to say, is it raining, and for somebody to write back and say, it's my opinion that it's not really raining, you've already created a problem. Mm-hmm. So you have to be really careful, because it's important in a body politic that it doesn't appear as though some people are gaining an advantage over others by gaining information that that person is not getting. but you also have to be careful how that information gets disseminated.
But, and just to clarify though, Mr. Petek, the communication I'm referencing is my communication, for example, with the administrator. It wouldn't be communication with another board member.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure for everybody listening at home, there's that distinction that's out there.
Well, and that distinction is important, but I mean, unless it's well, the problem is when you start carving out exceptions, you start to create problems. So it's my belief that if you folks have a particular issue and you want to discuss it with the town administrator, then everybody should be aware that that issue is on the table. Discussion about that issue, opinions about that issue should not be put in writing. If there's something that has to come back, then that issue should be marked up for the board. Everybody should be notified that the issue came up, it's going to be on, because then it's like an agenda item, it's going to be on the meeting, and then the information comes out at the meeting.
Okay. Ms. Riley?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you. Mr. Petek, I know some communities or boards, when they post their agenda, they post supportive documents with it. So,
Yep.
for example, if we were going to discuss the weather, and we asked the town administrator to give us a report, he's going to report at the meeting. That report could be included publicly with the agenda, so that we can share the information if we're sharing it with the whole public, I believe. Is that correct?
The most important word you just said there was publicly.
Yes.
If it's shared with the public, then that's not a problem.
Right.
And again, the point of this whole particular statute is to make sure that nothing is discussed behind the scenes, and everything in a body politic is discussed in the open. And if it's discussed in the open, then the public knows about it. So when people start to share certain types of information or opinions in emails, you've clearly violated the open meeting law. So anything that's an opinion should not be getting sent to anybody under any set of circumstances.
If it's, I have a question.
Certainly.
If it's, so I'll say that the chair sends me an email and it's not relevant to a subject, or let's say, let me try to think of an example. If it's a question he directs to me, and I want to answer it, but I want to answer it to the entire board, because all three of them are my bosses, and I think they should be aware of the answer and maybe the context of the question that was posed. Is that appropriate for me to respond so that they're aware of the context in which the question was asked?
So you're saying a selectman asks you a question.
Correct.
You want to respond to that question, and it's your belief you should respond to the entire board.
Correct, because all three of them are my bosses, and they all three should be aware of the conversation, not just one-on-one.
So, in theory, that's exactly what should be happening. The problem with that, when it gets the interplay with this particular statute, is any communications you have with the entire board cannot have an opinion in them. You can't discuss someone's reputation, character, or anything like that. So, the best thing to do is not put anything in writing at all, unless, again, it deals with specifically, and I'm looking right at this case, the Bolger case. Our best advice continues to be that public bodies not communicate over email at all, except for distributing meeting agendas, scheduling meetings, and distributing documents created by non-members to be discussed at meetings, and again, which are administrative tasks specifically sanctioned under the open meeting law. So as soon as you folks go into email and start emailing, you're potentially creating a problem. If in fact somebody asks you a question and you don't share it with your bosses, that's separate from the open meeting law, but that clearly kind of creates a problem as well, because it puts other people at a disadvantage to that particular person. So the most important thing is that these three people all share the same information when they come through the door. Nobody should have an advantage over somebody else. So I agree with what you're saying. All three are your bosses, as they are mine. They all need to know the same things are going on. But you have to be careful how you provide information to people. And when you put things in an email, you're putting it in writing. And depending upon what you send to them, you could potentially be violating the open meeting law. So my suggestion is, don't put it in writing.
So would it be appropriate to respond, saying I can respond to your question at a meeting?
Certainly, but again, you still need to be careful about what you discuss in those meetings. Again, there are certain things that are taboo that you can't discuss. You know, an employee's reputation, character, and things along those lines, things that are going to get you into, you know, some type of, another type of problem. So it's, the case law, despite the 7 or 8 pages that I sent you, comes down to the whole idea that putting something in writing in and of itself can create a problem.
Now, what about if a selectman comes to me and asks my professional opinion about something, or wants to bounce an idea off of me?
Somebody wanting to bounce an idea off you? An idea with respect to what? I mean, just
To town business, say, so tonight we're talking about
well, it's just you and the selectmen, so.
Yes.
I mean, that's a conversation that can certainly occur.
Okay, and if they each individually come to me to talk about an item.
The problem comes down to you putting something in writing, responding to anybody that has an opinion in it. You just can't do that under any circumstances. So, and the fine line that gets walked here is, it's ultimately unfair for one selectman to have an advantage over another, so I think that they all need to have the exact same information. The question becomes, how do you share it? So, sharing it with them all individually is fine. Clearly, you can't sit down with 2 out of the 3 in your office and discuss it, because that would be a problem. But having a conversation with somebody individually is not.
And that was exactly the crux of what I was getting at. At times, to me, it felt as though there wasn't quote-unquote equitable sharing of information, so.
Yeah, I mean, the information should be shared equitably, because not to do that puts someone at an unfortunate disadvantage. So everybody in front of us here should all have the same information walking in. Nobody should come in with more information than somebody else, because that's not fair to the other party, or parties, however many it may be. Catches them off guard. If there's something that comes up and somebody has a question and it has to go on an agenda, there's nothing wrong with sending out something to all 3 of them saying, this issue came up and it's going on the agenda next Tuesday. That way everybody knows it's coming up, they know when it's coming up, they can do their own homework, they can sit down and speak with you separately, and that'd be fine. But again, it has to do with the fact that body politic should not be discussing and rendering opinions in writing at all before meeting.
You know, I mean, it's going to be, to say the least, very laborious, because if the only way he can get back is verbally, is what you're saying. So he has the verbal back, the verbal Joe, verbal to me. You know, it's hard to imagine how that verbal is going to be exactly what she heard and exactly what I heard, unless he writes all of this down ahead and reads a script. You know, which is one thing. And of course, if he's going to do these separately, can you imagine with the board of 5? Why, he'd be all day answering a question.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that
No.
this is contradictory to what you're saying. I'm just saying, oh my gosh.
No, the point's well taken. I mean, it is laborious. There's no getting around it. It's laborious, but in order not to violate the statute, you have to do that, you know? And the whole point is so that the public sees exactly what's going on, that nothing's done behind closed doors. So, which is part of the concern some people have with going to 5. Because it means 2 people can go off and talk, you know, as opposed to the 3 of you now. You should be coming in with open minds, all the same information, and making a decision in front of the public. There's no going behind the scenes and talking to other people. So, I mean, that's not to me, that's up to the citizens of the town. It's got nothing to do with me, but that's part of what some people have been voicing that I have been hearing, but it's entirely up to them whatever they want to do. And it is cumbersome. However, if you don't want to violate the open meeting law, it's going to require much more work. And obviously, it's much easier for you to type something up and press send to 3 people than it is to have a conversation with 3 people. And then, this, as you say, Dick, the same thing is getting said to everybody. There's no question about, it changing. The old story about you whisper something in the kid's ear in 2nd grade, and they say it to everybody in the class. By the time it comes out the other end, you got a whole different story. So.
Good, thank you. Any other questions for council?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, isn't the best option to have most of those discussions or reports given in open meeting? And then you
Absolutely.
don't have the problem.
Absolutely. It's the only way to handle it.
Right.
That's the only way.
So you give notice, there's an issue, we're going to discuss it or make the presentation at the meeting.
Exactly. Yep. And then he can put in writing, this is going to be discussed. And that's the best way to handle it, because then when it goes to you folks, all it's doing is telling you that it's going to come up at the meeting, and then you folks can do whatever you consider to be due diligence to figure out what's going on with that particular issue.
Thank
Good.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shabo, you good?
Yes,
Great, thank you.
I understand what he said.
Perfect.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it for us, council, unless you have anything else for us.
I do not.
Great. Well, I appreciate you coming in and breaking that down for us. It was very helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, Tim.
All right, we will return to the agenda, completion of continuing business, discussion and action, town administrator's evaluation. Ms. Riley, as the immediate past chair, you compiled the evaluations that were submitted by myself and Mr. Shivo, and along with yours, and is it correct that you have those this evening?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I will turn it over to you then, Ms. Riley.
Okay, and I'm going to give to each of you a copy of your original in case there's anything that you want to add, along with a copy of the summation. So this is yours.
Thank you.
And this is yours.
And Ms. Riley, while you're sitting down, thank you for taking the time to assemble this. Just by the length of it, I know it took you some time, and so the board's appreciation to you for that.
You may not say that at the end, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully you will. I mentioned this, that it was kind of, you can't make everybody happy, but
Yeah.
the purpose of this evaluation is to establish and maintain effective Board of Selectmen and town administrator relations. For that reason, the evaluation should focus on how effectively the town administrator is accomplishing the goals established by the Board of Selectmen and how he is carrying out responsibilities in key performance areas. It is, in essence, an opportunity to discuss accomplishments and identify areas where improvements can be made. It should be constructive rather than congratulatory or punitive in nature. According to the Mass Municipal Association, members of a public body may submit individual evaluations of an employee for assembly into a master evaluation. That composite document must be presented in open meeting. I thank you both for giving me the opportunity to summarize the individual evaluations, which I am sure neither one of you will be completely satisfied with, because I found it very challenging, to say the least, to accomplish, especially since we each chose to complete the evaluation in different forms. One member completed the form following the proposed document completely, giving each category and each individual component a numerical grade based on a rating of 1 to 5. One member chose to write a narrative instead and considered it inappropriate to use the numerical grade, and one member chose a combination of the two. Because even trying to score with a numerical grade of 1 to 5 more often than not ended up with a grade halfway between numbers, and keeping in mind the purpose for the evaluation, in addition to the wide differences of opinion expressed in some instances, I determined it would be most appropriate to use the various performance categories stated, but to score them simply as needs improvement, or generally meets the performance standards, or has demonstrated significant improvement. I am providing each of you with a copy of your individual evaluation as well as my summary, so if you wish to add any comments, that is your prerogative to do. I will state that in some instances, the ratings and/or comments varied so significantly that finding a middle ground was near impossible, and so in those instances, I am presenting all expressed opinions. The category of leadership with Selectmen is based on the following criteria. 1, maintains consistent availability to the Board of Selectmen. 2, works with the board to facilitate their thoughts and ideas into cohesive policy development. 3, possesses the ability to recognize the board's direction despite possible differences from his own advice and successfully executes their policy directives. 4, effectively facilitates key projects. 5, ensures the selectmen are thoroughly informed of key plans and activities and staff throughout his reports, memoranda, and briefings. This category was identified as needs improvement in certain areas. Specifically, those areas of concern cited included the following: not providing equitable communication to all members, not always following through or responding in a timely manner to requests or directives, and not always understanding that the town administrator reports to the Board of Selectmen. Areas cited as meeting performance standards included consistent availability to selectmen to discuss town business and keeping the board apprised of plans and activities through his weekly reports and frequent memoranda. The category of leadership with employees is based on the following criteria. 1, motivates employees and gains their confidence and respect through demonstrated performance and decision-making. 2, delegates responsibilities and directs work activities to effectively accomplish town goals. 3, effectively cross-communicates between department heads and the Board of Selectmen. 4, evaluates department heads in a consistent and realistic manner. 5, mentors department heads to assist in further developing or maintaining their performance standards. This area was identified as needs improvement. In summary, all agree this has been a very challenging year for Mr. Waters, due in part to the pandemic and all that has involved, and due to the transition in managerial structure from an executive secretary turned town administrator to a strong town administrator position. And Mr. Waters has in some cases struggled with that. As stated in the Collins Center report, quote, "It is the case when making changes of any significant nature, resistance is to be expected. There are those within the town who have not embraced the expanded managerial role of the strong town administrator. Understandably, after years of having significant discretion and ability to manage operations and workload on their own, employees can be wary of someone perceived as interfering. It is clear after speaking with some of the employees that the current town administrator faces difficulty in overcoming that perception, regardless of whether it is accurate. Additional challenges include stepping into a role that was held by a local resident for such a lengthy tenure," unquote. Areas of concern cited by selectmen included the following: low staff morale and multiple staff have left the town's employment. There have been some missteps when dealing with personnel, and the importance of interpersonal relations and communications cannot be overstated. It was noted, however, that Mr. Waters is making some progress, and his attitude regarding this critically important developmental opportunity appears positive. The category of leadership in the community and follows the following criteria: conveys an attitude and feeling of professionalism through respect, courtesy, and sensitivity to the public, and promotes the same behavior in employees of the town. 2, provides a high level of responsive and vital customer service, including timely follow-through on citizen requests and complaints. 3, has general overall community satisfaction with the town's administrative and service obligations. 4, maintains an appropriate level of involvement and communication with community organizations and businesses. This area was identified as difficult to evaluate due to COVID, which has not provided the town administrator the opportunity to be out in the community. Concern was expressed about the scattered department scheduling during COVID and the decline in constituent services that resulted. On the other hand, however, it was pointed out that due to COVID, the only real opportunity the town administrator has had to convey an attitude and feeling of professionalism through respect, courtesy, and sensitivity to the public has been at televised board meetings, and he has consistently held those standards even in the face of being lectured, berated, and at times addressed publicly in a less than respectful manner. The category of leadership with other governmental entities in the news media involves the following criteria: establishes and maintains a liaison with other governmental jurisdictions, especially with regard to those areas of service that improve or enhance the town's programs, maintains effective communications with other governmental jurisdictions with which the town is involved or interfaces, skillfully and favorably represents the town to the press, radio, and television, and anticipates sensitive topics that may eventually reach the media, and initiates communication to minimize negative impact to the town. This area was identified as generally meets the performance standards. Mr. Waters has established and maintains a liaison with the Finance Committee, the Capital Planning Committee, the Governmental Study Committee, the Public Safety Building Committee, and the Bridgewater-Raynham Regional Agreement Study Committee, and attends meetings of those entities. The only media involvement with the board on any kind of regular basis is with the Raynham Cable Channel, Raycam, and he has established and maintains a good working relationship with Executive Director Michael Halen. The category of organizational management in general includes the following criteria: ensures that staff provides timely and objective policy information for the board to consider, and manages the staff to implement the board's policy decisions. Effectively plans and organizes work that results either from policies adopted by the board or directives given by the board, and ensures it is carried out in a timely manner. Oversees ongoing programs and services to the town to ensure continued effectiveness, as well as ensuring implementation of new programs adopted by the board. Ensures organized responses to public requests and complaints, as well as to concerns brought to the attention of staff by the board. This area was identified as needs improvement. Concerns expressed included that it is not unusual to make multiple requests for updates, and staff are not provided clear direction on how to fulfill requests. One specific example cited concerned the OPEIU telework policy and the delay in implementing the requirement that the board receive updates. On the other hand, areas cited as positive included organizing the job searches for the Human Resources Coordinator, Town Accountant, and Permitting Clerk, and working with department heads and the Town Moderator Search Committee on those efforts, and guiding the Health Department through the transition period when the health agent's position became vacant in the midst of a pandemic. Specifically, Mr. Waters reached out to the Bridgewater Town Manager to see if their health agent could assist Raynham during this emergency, and then he then worked with him and the Raynham Health Inspector, who was still new to the position, to fill the gap while the search for the health agent was taking place. The category Organizational Management for Fiscal Matters includes the following. Manages the financial resources of the town to ensure the town maintains a sound financial condition and continues to receive clean audits from the DOR. Effectively aids the board in developing a realistic budget that meets the board's goals. Communicates concerns in a timely manner to the board regarding issues that may significantly affect the town fiscally in the foreseeable future, and oversees the various capital projects of the town to ensure that they are accomplished on time and within budget. This area was identified as both needs improvement in some areas and generally meets performance standards in other areas. Regarding the areas needing improvement, comments included, and I quote, under the TA, the previous town accountant departed. The new interim accountant was on board based upon the recommendation of the TA, despite the accountant not having experience with our software, which led to operational issues. Both free cash and the annual audit started late, and it took 6 months to get a partial year-to-date budget, despite claiming accomplishing the board's goal of financial sustainability and citing accounting work was kept up to date. Regarding the area, unquote, regarding the areas cited for generally meets performance standards, comments included, quote, this is an area that has been very challenging with the departure of both the part-time accountant and the accounting clerk, leaving the town with an accounting program that very few people know how to navigate. Still, there have been positive steps. Mr. Waters has followed up on the DLS recommended best practice of initiating financial staff team meetings involving the town administrator, deputy assessor, town accountant, and treasurer collector for improved communication, collaboration, financial accountability, and sustainability, and has worked with the treasurer collector to draft new financial policies. He also provided support and assistance as needed for the Finance Committee and Capital Planning Committee. Mr. Waters also introduced to the Finance Committee team a shared Excel spreadsheet document to allow members to work on the budget together in real time. And he worked with the interim town accountant and treasurer collector on developing and implementing a credit card policy. The category identified as organizational management for past personnel matters includes the following. 1, effectively manages personnel to maintain staff morale and to minimize the risk of adverse personnel actions or rulings, and normally maintains a work-life balance and encourages the same from staff. This area was identified as needs improvement. Areas cited included staff morale and expressed frustration by some staff members. It was noted, however, that some of this can be attributed to the lack of support handling the responsibilities of the enhanced town administrator's position, and that the new Human Resources Coordinator should help in the effort to deal more effectively in this area. Positive steps taken by the town administrator in this regard include the regular department head meetings that he maintained even through the pandemic. He has also proposed and worked with the Collins Center on a personnel study and a non-union personnel classification study, which should help address some staff concerns. The category of community and economic development was determined to not be applicable at this time, and no comments were received. The category of individual qualities includes the following. 1, creative, anticipative, innovative. 2, skilled at listening and isolating key points or issues. 3, skilled at verbal and written communication. 4, decision-making process indicates fairness and impartiality and is based on logic and reason. 5, remains flexible, objective, and receptive to suggestions. 6, effectively mediates and resolves problems even under strained and unpleasant conditions. 7, universally applies common sense, tact, and diplomacy. 8, self-confident, accepts criticism, able to cope with stress and maintain self-control. 9, displays enthusiasm for work. 10, demonstrates integrity and loyalty to the town's best interests. Again, that's the criteria. This area was identified as needs improvement in some cases and generally meets performance standards in others. Regarding needs improvement, comments included the following, quote, "The TA continues to struggle in this area. A particular concern is his continued inability to effectively communicate, coupled with his desire to make decisions without providing any notification to the board. The TA has also demonstrated the inability to exercise self-control and sound judgment," unquote. Regarding generally meets performance standards, comments included the following, quote, "Mr. Waters reports at meetings and his written reports are clear and concise, and he frequently offers recommendations or suggested possible solutions to situations. He always addresses the board with respect and demonstrates self-control in the face of criticism, whether it is warranted or not," unquote. For the category of accomplishments, the town administrator was asked to submit a list of major accomplishments during the evaluation period. Mr. Waters has provided that report, indicated in the beginning that, quote, "The last 12 months have certainly been challenging for all of us, with the pandemic dominating and upending norms of life and the workplace. This has presented management and leadership challenges which we as a team have had to meet head-on. The accomplishments listed are not possible without the collaboration, support, guidance, and communication of the town staff, selectmen, various boards and committees, and town residents who contribute their outside-the-bubble views and feedback on town services," unquote. Mr. Waters goes on to list several accomplishments, some of which have already been referred to through this evaluation process. Some others cited included: worked with the Collins Center staff on the organizational study and HR audit, non-union personnel classification study, animal control operation and personnel study, finance director search, and a continuity of operations plan. Collaborated with the town moderator, town council, library board of trustees, and town staff to coordinate the transition of the library into a town department. Collaborated with the building commissioner, the council on aging director, and the advisory board chair to bid out the COA siding project. Completed the cleaning of town hall ductwork to improve the respiratory environment for employees, which was a project identified in the 2018 Town Hall Environmental Report. Worked with MX, the now new IT company, to implement a backup server and off-site backup for the town's IT needs. Collaborated with the town clerk, town moderator, and department heads to move the general code project and expansion project forward. Posted Board of Selectmen meeting department updates, one of the Collins Center's recommendations to help improve communication. Continued the new tradition of conducting a mid-year financial report and presentation to the board with the interim town accountant and treasury collector. Mr. Waters also pointed out that he completed his MCPPO certification with 1 year of being hired, a contract requirement, and successfully renewed his professional credentialing, achieving 40 hours of continuing education during the 2020 calendar year. In conclusion, the general consensus of the board is that there are areas where improvements are needed. Some missteps have been made with dealing with personnel, but Mr. Waters is making progress in that regard, and his attitude appears positive regarding this developmental opportunity. Mr. Waters also has the right attitude in stating that accomplishments have not been possible without the collaboration, support, communication, and attitude of working together as a team involving all town staff, selectmen, various boards and committees, and town residents. I respectfully submit this report on the evaluation of the town administrator and invite both of you to add any additional comments that you feel are appropriate at this time. And next year, Mr. Chairman, you can have the
Thank you. Have a drink, Ms. Riley. And Mr. Shivo, any comments?
Did you go over that again? No, I would say,
The red button on
sorry.
your...
Can you hear me now? Yeah, I'm sorry. No, what I would say is this, Pat, it's obviously a very comprehensive evaluation. You obviously put an enormous amount of time into it. You've incorporated all the input that you received from the board, and I just have to say, a very thorough job. There are, as you put it very well, accomplished a lot of developmental opportunities going forward, and we'll continue to work to achieve those the progress that you outlined that was needed. So it would be difficult to say anything other than thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shivo. I would echo Mr. Shivo's thanks, Ms. Riley. Again, very thorough, very in-depth, and you can tell you took care to try to incorporate the differing views without having seen either one of your comments. I can see the contrast, and I certainly appreciate that. And without going into too much detail, I would just, again, echo what Mr. Shivo said and what you said, but from my perspective, I think the area that highlights the place where I am at in terms of opinion is categorizing his evaluation as needing improvement. I think, I'm sure you read that in my review. I think there's significant areas where growth and development need to be made for the benefit of the town, for the benefit of our employees here. And I think, again, you did a good job incorporating in some of those concerns, and so I'm fine with that. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. That concludes our contractual requirement for the evaluation for this year. No other old business. Under new business, discussion and action, Collins sent a memo on animal control. Mr. Shivo, did you
Yes,
want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Collins Center has established, I think, a very, very good start with regard to what needs to be done to advance the animal control activity within the town. It's very interesting that this study it's taken place in a very timely way. We see right now our animal control officer is having great difficulty in finding a second part-time person. In fact, to my knowledge, the ACO has not yet found such a person, and it does cry out for a better approach, a new approach to going forward. And what the Collins report here has done is they've established some groundwork. They've raised a lot of questions. Do we need a shelter director or administrator? Do we need a full-time person or a part-time person? Should the ACO report to the police? And even further than that, should possibly the police do some on-call activity? So there's a lot of questions here that they're raising in their study, and they're further suggesting, and I'll read the last sentence, that they further indicated that the Collins Center can assist with further exploring these options, including in-depth examination of methods for incorporating ACO responsibilities under police department supervision and appropriate forms of compensation. Once a direction is determined, the center can develop job descriptions and provide salary analysis. So, Mr. Chairman, to the board, I would respectfully make a motion that we request the Collins Center to do the follow-on study to give us some specific data with regard to how to go forward. They've raised a lot of good questions. This study was a relatively brief one, and I think it'd be appropriate to move forward and bring this to full conclusion as far as what the town should be doing going forward.
I'll second that for discussion. I know Collins Center does a lot of outreach, so I would support that with the idea that they will speak with the different players in town that would be involved to get input.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. That's what I was going to add as well. Specifically, you're talking about the police, so the chief needs to be involved. Our existing animal control officer needs to be involved. There's one particular proposal where you might have to have collective bargaining discussions. So there's a lot of layers to it, but yeah, I would agree. We continue to move forward with the discussion. Yep. So that's the motion with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shivo.
Thank you.
Discussion and action, COVID-19 opening of town offices. Last week, the administrator proposed effective June 1 of reopening town offices during normal business hours, which is 8:30 to 4:30 Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to noon on Fridays, and then 6 to 8 on Tuesdays. And we were just looking, I think, to get confirmation from the health agent that this was safe to do and allowable.
Yeah, so he's on the line right now if he can unmute himself.
Matt, are you with us?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
If you want to give us a brief opinion on what's been proposed to us?
Yeah, I think that that's appropriate, given what the state's reopening plan is going to be changing to over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Certainly next Monday, we're going to be moving to a Phase 4, Step 1, with some allowance for some activities under Phase 4, Step 2. Come May 29th, the state will certainly be moving into the actual full Phase 4, Step 2. And that's why with the discussion with the town administrator had thought June 1st would be the best day to reopen town hall, in a more full capacity, beyond what we're doing just right now, 2 days a week open to the public and by appointment only. That'll be our next, the next business day once the state moves to that final phase and step. So I think it's appropriate. I have checked around with some of my colleagues and what other towns are doing. And it seems that that's the direction which a lot of other towns are going to be going as well.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Waters, Mr. Tanis, or action on the request?
No, I would make a motion to approve.
Okay.
I certainly was stuck at it.
Just
Mr. Waters?
one quick question of the board. Matt and I discussed this a little bit earlier about Tuesday nights with the summer schedule coming up. I believe Tuesday nights will still be challenging to open for business. Is that something that the board wants to discuss?
I'm fine. I think the compromise right now is the Monday through Friday. I think the Tuesday nights are going to be challenging because we still have the restrictions for our meetings and, monitoring the flow of that. So maybe that's the compromise if the board's amenable to that, is the Monday through Friday, and we
Change my motion to that.
and we revisit the Tuesdays after.
Mr. Chairman, I did confirm with the state this afternoon that Board of Selectmen meetings, as with other board members, are still limited to the 50% capacity, which for the Selectmen's meeting is between 8 and 10. I'd have to measure the room again.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a wise decision on the board's side.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that is approved. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Graham. Next up, Olson's Greenhouses, lease of parcel D at Borden Colony. This is a renewal of their existing lease for their farming on the property for an additional 5 years, from May 1, 2021 to May 1, 2026. What's the board's pleasure?
Move to approve the lease.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved, thank you. Non-union contracts, I'm requesting we table it for one more week as there's still some documents that need to be finalized.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is tabled, thank you. Next up, summer meeting schedule. We always work around the 4th of July. Those are the dates. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those are approved. Town Administrator's Report, Mr. Water.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The town has begun negotiations with the OPEIU union with ground rules in place, proposals exchanged, and meetings set forth for the future. Both sides have started off productively. Important note, the town meeting warrant has been dropped off to the post office this afternoon, and spare copies were delivered to Town Hall. When you receive your copy in the mail, you will notice that the budget on the back got chopped off. It is missing pages 2, 3, and 4, including revenue and totals. I'm currently working with the printer to get those pages printed out as a supplemental document to hand out at town meeting. The correct version has been posted on the website, so please print out the last few pages for your records. I will also have supplemental pages here at Town Hall once the printer delivers them. My apologies to anybody who has taken issue with this or has been challenged by this. The Selectmen's next regularly scheduled meeting will be on Tuesday, May 11th, 2021 at 7 p.m. right here in the Don McKinnon Meeting Room of Town Hall, 558 South Main Street, Raynham, Massachusetts. The public will be able to participate via GoToMeeting, meeting platform, or by watching the Raynham Channel on Verizon, Comcast, or a recording posted later on YouTube. Tuesday, May 11th will be the pre-town meeting for the upcoming annual town meeting. And then the annual town meeting is being held at the Raynham Middle School on Monday, May 17th, starting at 6 p.m. for the special town meeting warrant and 7 p.m. for the annual town meeting. Residents should keep an eye out for their warrants, which will be arriving in the mail soon. And finally, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to pass along thank you from the Economic Development Committee to Olson's Greenhouse. They have taken over the welcome sign maintenance and around town. You'll see that they've been cleaned, and plantings will be, if they haven't been already planted, and I believe they're going to take over routine maintenance. That is all I have, Mr. Chairman, unless there's questions or comments.
Mr. Shivo, any questions?
No, thank you.
Ms. Riley?
No, thank
Okay,
you.
I had one question, just, and this is more so for the board. Typically, what we would do at the pre-town meeting, which is set at 7, we would meet at 6 or 6:30. So that would be next week. Does the board want to meet early so it doesn't interfere with the pre-town?
Sure.
Okay. Does that work? Do we want to do 6:15? I don't know what the agenda looks like yet.
Whatever. I'm
6:15?
flexible.
Fine.
Okay, so we'll have our special meeting at 6:15, which will allow the moderator to start promptly at 7 for the pre-town. Perfect, thank you. All right, Selectmen's report, Mr. Shivo, anything?
No, nothing additional.
Ms. Riley?
I have some show and tell,
Okay.
actually, for your first meeting. Just want to mention that our rave organization is once again doing their Raynham Strong fundraiser, and they have T-shirts that say Raynham Strong,
Wow.
a little flag on the back, as well as masks, one of which I'm wearing right now. Also doing baseball caps for the first time. And I believe this Friday is the deadline to get your orders in. So you can find out, go online, ravevolunteercoordinator@gmail.com. And all proceeds, in addition to spreading the good word about Raynham Strong, all proceeds will benefit Rave's programs, which include, unfortunately, no Memorial Day Parade this year, but next year, bigger and better than ever, in addition to our Veterans Day programs and all of the programs in the schools.
Great, thank you. That mask would come in handy. I have the worst luck with these. They keep snapping on me. All right.
I had an extra one.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll give you some money after. Look at that, I've been holding this up.
See that?
Thank you, Miss Riley.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah.
I apologize.
All right, no other correspondence, press time? None? None, okay. Any emergency business?
None, Mr. Chair.
I have none.
Okay, great. Citizen and community input, any? None?
Nothing.
All right. Performance of administrative duties, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the Raynham invoice and payroll warrants dated today.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved, and I'll entertain a motion for the Raynham police invoice and payroll warrants.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I am going to abstain from that, so 2 in the affirmative, 1 abstention. If there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn, sign the bills, no additional business to be conducted.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are
Aye.
adjourned, thank you.
you.